and welcome back to another episode of the Straight Shooter Recruiter. I'm Emily, a senior recruiter by day, podcast host by night, and then career coach on the weekends. Again, I apologize in advance for the strange setup / what you're probably hearing in the background, which would be the sweet sound of a puppy playing. I'm so sorry. My entire apartment is an absolute puppy war zone. Everything is puppy proofed, but that's basically me just hiding everything that I care about. Anyways, it looks like a total mess. If you're watching this on YouTube, hey, what's up? Thank you. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you're listening on the podcast, don't be shy. Head over to my YouTube channel. So much more content for you to enjoy. Today, we are going to be talking about part 2 of a video I recently uploaded, all about resumes. In the first video, we talked about the importance of a resume format and how your format or how your resume visually looks will help determine if it gets read. But how your resume reads will determine if you're going to get the interview. We're going to go through some best practices in terms of writing your resume, answer some frequently asked questions, and hopefully clear up a little bit of the anxiety that we all naturally have around resumes. So grab a coffee, let's get comfortable, and we'll crack into it. I said this in my last video, but I want to reiterate it here. There is no such thing as a perfect resume. Every recruiter, every company, they're all going to have a different vision or idea of what the ideal profile looks like. Your goal is to make sure that your resume is clean, digestible, and pretty easy to understand across the board. It's challenging to achieve that when your resume is too long or far too wordy. So the first thing that I want to tackle is the length of your resume. So for each of your work experiences, remembering that we spoke about the format in the last video. So if you want some tips on the format, head over there. But when it comes to your work experiences, it's ideal for you to have between 3 to 6 bullet points per work experience or volunteer experience, both count. I do want to emphasize though, one bullet point does not mean that you have a paragraph in that bullet point or that it's 4 sentences, but it's in one bullet point, so it's fine. It's not fine, okay? Make sure that you have a maximum of 1 to 2 sentences per bullet point. To be honest, ideally you should be focusing on 1 sentence. I know that can be a little bit tricky. So if the whole 1 sentence thing doesn't feel feasible, completely fine. Focus on 2 sentences per bullet point. That might feel really overwhelming or frankly unachievable, but here are 2 things you can do to help condense the writing of your resume and also make it read a little bit better. The first thing is you should not be writing in first person. I don't want to see I, me, we, none of that. Take all of that off of your resume. The reason for that is sentences that use phrases like I, we, or us tend to be a little bit longer, a little bit more clunky, and frankly, they just come across as slightly less professional. It's best to focus on writing in the third person as much as possible. I'll give you some examples as well in the description of this YouTube video, as well as in the description for this podcast episode. Second tip, it's action verbs. Oh, nothing gets me excited quite like some action verbs. Action verbs are verbs that place you at the center of the action, of the good stuff, of the what you did. And we'll get to, how you structure your sentences in just a second, but it all starts with these action verbs. It's really critical that every single one of your bullet points on your resume starts with an action verb. Here are some examples. I've put them somewhere on the screen, but I'm going to read out a few of my favorites. I've actually got them in front of me. So you could say words like expand, maximize, generate, convey, advise, direct, develop. These are basically words that are going to be condensing the amount of time it takes for you to get to the point, while also being really clear about the details of what you did. Which leads me to another tip that is critical. The resume needs to be you focused. It needs to be all about you. Oftentimes I'll be reading people's resumes and they're short, concise, really easy to get through, but I still don't actually understand what their job was or what their role was, because all they did was describe the work their team achieved or a team project that they've worked on or the scope of the company. And don't get me wrong, all of that is important, but I'm reading your resume to understand specifically what you achieved. So as you write your resume, ask yourself, is it clear to the reader or to the recruiter what my job responsibilities were, what I achieved within this role, and the specific actions that I took to get there? You need to make sure you've included enough detail to help me understand specifically what your job was, what you achieved, and how you did it. You, Y-O-U. like that Netflix series, not your whole team. I don't care what Susie on your team did. I only care about what you achieved, how you contributed, and the details of that. Speaking of details, one of the things that almost every single resume lacks is data. And data, dang, is it important. Data is something that will set your resume apart in ways I can't even begin to explain. It is so critically important.
The numbers don't lie.
And there's 1,000 different ways you can put data on your resume. Of course, you're not always going to have, metrics or percentages for all of your work, but even having 1 or 2, ideally 3 pieces of data for every single work experience does 2 amazing things. The first, it visually breaks up your resume so that it's easier for the recruiter to digest and read. And secondly, it helps us understand the quantity, of work that you put out or the quality of work that you put out, both of which are super important. Some easy ideas for this might be the number of customers you supported, the number of people that you supported or led when you were a summer camp counselor or when you were leading a small team. It could be the outcomes of projects that you've worked on. So how much time did you save? How much did sales go up? Really, any piece of data that can help to quantify how you worked or the outcome of your work is so, so important. So after you've gone through your resume and made sure that all of your bullet points start with action verbs, that they're not in the first person, that they're concise, and most importantly, have lots of data and details, it's time for you to step away from it. The worst thing you can do is get too close to your resume. Obviously, you understand the work that you were doing it, but you need to step away and read your resume from the lens of someone who has no idea what your job title was. What was that senior analyst position? What was that data intern role? I really need to get you to read your resume through the lens of someone who has no idea what you've done. So after you've updated your resume, walk away at least for a day or 2 and then read it again. All right, it's example time. I wrote out an example of something that you might find on someone's resume and what it sounds like after we implement things like action verbs, data, and having a little bit more detail on there. So the sentence started off as, the team completed a coding challenge and developed a working mobile app prototype. Okay, so what? That doesn't give me enough information to understand how you specifically contributed. Listen to this. I personally think it sounds so much better. Designed and developed the back end of a traffic predicting mobile application in partnership with a team of 5 engineers, period. Resulted in 300 plus downloads per month on the Apple App Store. Easy. It's 1 to 2 sentences. It's clear. It shows the results. It shows data. And more importantly, it focuses on what your contribution was. In this example, you were doing the back-end development. This was just a short and sweet video to help you get into the zone in terms of writing your resume. It's completely okay for this to feel overwhelming and confusing, and take it from someone who does this for a living. It takes some practice. But if you implement these best practices and go back at your resume every couple of weeks or every couple of months to keep refreshing it, you're going to become a pro in no time. If your question was not answered today, let me know in the comments. I'm more than happy to answer. Please feel free to DM me, message me, all that good stuff. But if you found this or any of my other content helpful, please, please, please subscribe, like. If you're listening on the podcast, please go live a blah, blah, blah. What was that? Please go leave a rating. Oh my gosh. Can you tell I need a coffee? Y'all, being a dog mom, that's a lot of work. I feel like I'm constantly on this dog. Like, I had to berate up my couch because he kept crawling underneath there. I have to hide all my shoes. I'm getting no sleep, but I guess this is the life that I signed up for. Anywho, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I always enjoy spending a little time with you virtually. Let me know if this was helpful, and I will talk to you soon.